And so I'm Jonas Vandennieuwenhuysen. I'm doing a PhD on this topic. I've been studying the auditor selection process for the last 4 years by now, so that's already quite a long time.
And we're very grateful for the access to participants for this research. It's really unparalleled anywhere else in the world to be able to have this kind of connection between scholarly work and practice. And so we very much hope that we learn from each other and have that shared interest in advancing the auditing and accounting profession.
So just a quick overview of our research project. So what did we study? Well, we study how companies organize their selection process, and then also to what degree the actual practices correspond to the formal selection process that's been set up by these companies. And we also, and that's something that's very much not studied in literature, is how auditors and clients engage in interpersonal interactions during the auditor selection process. We also investigate what objectives the selection process participants try to achieve. And I think Jan gave a very good introduction to why our study matters, because, for example, auditor independence has been under continuous scrutiny. There has been this new, well, it's not really new anymore, this 2014 EU audit reform, where the selection process has really been under scrutiny, the introduction of mandatory audit firm rotation, also the increased audit committee requirements, the types of criteria that auditors have to be selected on. And also a consequence of that is that auditor changes have become more and more frequent, but they're very much understudied. Also interesting in the Dutch setting is that there are only 6 public interest entity licensed audit firms, which definitely is interesting for our results. Finally, there's also no requirement to publicly disclose the auditor selection process. And as I said before, it's very under-researched, but that's what our literature review definitely will show. So how did we study this? Well, we did 8 case studies. So we investigated 8 public interest entity audit firm rotation processes, where we interviewed the relevant audit partner, an audit committee member, at least the CFO, and then other management team members that have been involved. And we also have access to selection process documents. So I'm going to very quickly share the findings. We'll go deeper into those later. But first, what we see is that, well, these new regulations, they definitely influence the organization of the selection process, but also the dynamics of the audit market, what I said before about these 6 PI-licensed audit firms. We see that there are very formalized and standardized selection processes by the companies to comply with the regulations, but also to legitimize this process towards shareholders, the media, and other stakeholders. However, what we then see is, well, companies, they actually use their practical relationship-focused needs, and they have these very relationship-focused needs, and this drives decoupling from the processes that they set up before. Because what we really see is there are these key needs for trust, commitment, and cooperation, and that the eventual decision-making is also very much on these criteria. So there are scorecards, for example, used, but this evaluation of trust and commitment really goes beyond these formal scorecards. Finally, management involvement is necessary to evaluate this auditor-client fit, so we also investigate management involvement in the selection process. And to conclude, individuals, all of the individuals, so the partners, audit committee members, management team members are largely aligned in their objectives. Overall, they emphasize that efficiency is important in the selection processes, but there are some differences in what efficiency really means for them.
But I'll also add that there's implications there's like an interesting regulatory framework here. So how does the requirement to rotate, how does that play a role? And what's really fascinating about the auditing field is it's difficult to define, right? So, you don't always know that you had a bad audit until there's like a bad outcome. You might have a bad audit that is done, but there's no restatement, there's just no issues because the company's accounting was good. On top of that, there are more things. I know that's a very vague, even I have a hard time articulating, but there's more that an auditor offers than just testing evidence and producing the report and the auditor's opinion. But we don't have a good understanding of what those things are, and are they valuable or not. So what we also believe that we add is an understanding of what are some other roles that this auditor-client relationship plays, not only in financial reporting, but more broadly as a business partnership. And also that we're trying to identify, like, what are the big concepts in this relationship that could either be further studied or better articulated either by those choosing the auditor or better signaled by the auditors themselves. That's the next open question, right? So what we think our findings shed light on is putting into place this very formalized process. It complies with every, it complies with every regulation. It is also very intentional. So what's observable is you see scorecards, you see this technical tool, you see that everybody involved has really been thoughtful and has been thoroughly involved. As long as that process is put into place, it should protect against these gut feelings going in the wrong direction. So we can't conclusively say this will result, right, in a better audit, because we're not really looking at the audit outcomes. But what comes to light in our findings is this idea that what everybody is aligned in, both auditors and the audit committee and management that is involved in this decision, is they're all aligned on trying to have this cooperative audit, right? And what could that cooperation mean? If you look at it kind of cynically, it could mean everybody agrees and nobody challenges each other. But you could also look at it as giving the auditor access to the evidence that they really need. They're being open with the auditor themselves feeling like they're in a safe relationship to bring up some challenges. Right? So it potentially goes either of these ways. So we don't have really an answer to the question, right? Like, should you go with gut feeling? But you set yourself up perhaps the best by having that thorough process, at least in the first place, and having multiple stakeholders involved. We'll be back here for the FAR conference later on this month. So yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Kris and Jonas.
Thank you.
I hope that you keep doing and looking into this stuff, because I think it's actually, one of the pillars of what we call audit quality. Really is, right? It's how that you actually shape this relationship and how that comes about. I think that it is a very important insight, and we know way too little of that. So, keep doing this, please.